I go out and there's like this creepy orange tentacle thing strangulating my plants. And I dig down and I look for roots and there were no roots. And I'm going, what the heck is this? And it was fluorescent orange and it had these tentacles and they were everywhere. And I pulled them off and my plants and I put them on the ground and they moved like snakes. And it was like, this is the creepiest thing I have ever seen. And so I did an article on it. And I kid you not, one of my patrons contacted me and said, that's Dodder and Dodder. And starting in 2012, it started to invade the whole United States and it's taking out vast swaths of our crops.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I have a treat. I know so many of you have been asking about what can we expect with the galactic cosmic radiation? What about this new 5G? What about just radiation in general? You know, people have been writing, asking about Fukushima. What about the radiation in our lives? Well, today I have some answers for you. Celeste Bishop Solom. She just wrote the book, God's Marvelous Protective Provisions for the Coming Nuclear and Solar Storm Crisis. Now, we talked about the grand solar minimum in depth on this channel, the changes with the decreasing magnetosphere. And here we have a book to follow up on that and explain in depth the ways that you can protect yourself using foods, plants, and vegetables around your house and things that you can find quite easily in markets. It's called radioprotective vitamins and minerals. And again, just for reference, this is a medical disclaimer. This is not in any way, shape, or form medical advice. This is artistic entertainment.
Yes.
And it's an informative talk. It's more about what we can expect as the sun goes to sleep on its 400-year cycle of the grand solar minimum and the cosmic radiation bombardment as well as terrestrial sources. You know, we need to keep our bodies healthy. So Celeste, I'm so glad you joined me. Thank you.
And that's why I don't know that we're going to see a government improvement to infrastructure because government is not investing in the infrastructure other than cyber command and control type systems are getting the money and other things are not. So I think it's going to drill down to the individual to have redundant systems and you're going to have to think, where am I going to get my food if the grocery store is not open? How am I going to get water if my water pipes are frozen or I can't get water because the pipes are frozen? What am I going to do about sewage? Because that's an issue. When my water pipes broke, I had to have a solution for that, which is a 5-gallon bucket and with a toilet seat on it. And, but then where do you dispose of that? Fortunately, I live in the wilderness, so that's not a big issue unless there's 14 feet of snow out there. But, people are going to have to, on an individual level, have their own plan. And that's why you need to start thinking about these things now. And then once you have a plan this year, I keep getting hit with this thing broke or that thing broke. So to have a redundant system. So let's say you have a pair of gloves, have 2 pairs of gloves. You have a winter coat, have 2 pairs or have a double. I think each of us has to have a redundant system for those critical things in our life. And for each one of us, that's going to be unique to our personal lifestyle. But there's some general things like you need the food and the water and the shelter. So I would think that you would have to have two systems in place in case one fails. And if the supply chain goes down, you're not going to be able to type in Amazon and have it come to your door. So you're going to have to be able to think through, okay, how am I going to handle these situations as they come up?
There's no rural free delivery anymore, and that will not come to your house. And I don't care where you order it from. RFD is extinct. But think about also Just simple things like bleach and ammonia, because you hit on the head right there. This thing about hygiene, you live far out by yourself, but you imagine if you're living in the average neighborhood and a family of four, how much waste, and then where do they dispose of it? Well, you might be more cautious than your neighbor, and your neighbor might just throw the bag out in the back lawn there. How many neighborhoods are just going to be inundated with cholera and different types of diseases? And also, the simple things like bleach and ammonia, having extra bottles of these around could be a lifesaver, literally, for purifying water as well as hygiene. Hygiene cannot be understated. I just don't care if you're the biggest, strongest mountain man on the planet. If your hygiene is not there, you are going to die. Period. So everybody thinks big, rough and tumble bodybuilder, carrying weapons and everything. No, if your hands get dirty and you get sick because you don't have any way to cleanse yourself, that's going to be your biggest detriment, is the health. And I think a lot of waterborne illnesses are going to creep around this time, stuff we haven't seen in centuries. And take a look in California, you can almost see kind of what's happening out there, or in Venezuela, places where just basic necessities are broken down. And they're talking about having typhus out there again. They're talking about having like scabies and plague and all kind of crazy things that we haven't heard of in centuries in California because they can't keep the hygiene up. Now imagine that globally, or imagine it across the entire United States, because all the government systems are no longer functional because of, it could be anything. It could be a CME, a super flare, could be an economic collapse. I don't know what. There's a thousand scenarios that could take it down. But when it goes down, it doesn't matter how it goes down. You're on your own. And a redundant system is an understatement. But put an extra check next to the hygiene part.
Absolutely. An important thing to remember, though, an important lesson that I learned when I was younger, well, I was a teenager. My grandmother lived in a house next to us, and she was a clean freak, Of course, now I'm a clean freak. But anyway, back in the day she was, and she mixed ammonia and bleach together and ended up burning her lungs in the hospital. So whatever you do, use those products, but use them separately. Do not mix ammonia and bleach together. And another comment that I really need to insert here is that I looked at a military document, and one of the findings from the Manhattan Project, which a lot of people are familiar with, indicated that when a person is exposed, or an animal is exposed to radiation, or these electromagnetic radiation, your body temperature drops. And when you are fighting an infection, part of the way that your immune system works is to increase your body temperature to fight off that pathogen. We're going to be exposed to all of these pathogens, but the radiation is going to take out a vital part of our immune system. And we all need to become aware of that. And that will happen in, like I said, both humans and with our animals, livestock, companion animals, and so forth.
So how do you get those temperatures to start to rebalance if one's going cold because of the radiation, and that nullifies or turns off the heat or the fever that we would get to try to kill off some of the bacteria? Or what do you need to do? Like go run and start doing jumping jacks to try to bring the body temperature back up? Because it seems like, one's going to override the other. Any advice for that?
Yes, that's one reason I wrote the book. You can incorporate the herbs and the spices and the foods and the supplements to give you that radio protection. So you will be protected when these waves hit and particles. And so your body temperature will remain pretty stable. And if it drops a degree or two, you can just, bump up your heat source, whatever that is, for your particular situation. But I would say the primary is to have a good foundation of real foods in your diet that are radioprotective, and that will eliminate that issue that so many other people are going to succumb from.
I had a curious question here, that since we've been talking about this, if there's breakdowns in the economic system, and if there's breakdowns in the power supply, How many radiation sources do you think are going to start to be more exposed or start to leak out? And I would mean either electrical generation plants or storage facilities that might have some sort of barrier between the outside, and then it malfunctions for some reason. When electrical grids start to go down and governments aren't functioning at their highest level, some things are just left and people walk away. And, who knows what's going to be walked away from in this time. So overall, yeah, that's a tricky question to ask without spooking anybody, because, we've seen with Fukushima how much is spread just from that alone. That's only one. But then what about all the other things going on outside of this too? I mean, what about medical labs? What happens to that? Now, even coming down to, just medical waste treatment that has something in there that's been radioactive for, I don't know, again, trying to treat cancers. You got all these different factors out there of all these possible radiation sources in the environment escaping because of lack of, regular stability in our society to keep people employed or keep them at that job, thinking that there might be something in the future when it all starts to dissolve. People are going to behave very differently.
Well, it's one reason that I was interested in doing this book, is because back in the early 1970s, I conceived my first child, and I had a beautiful pregnancy. And when I gave birth, my daughter was born with 33 major birth defects, and that were life-threatening. Her chance of survival was less than 5%. And I mean, everything from, all of her whole system, her organs, her structural system, the whole 10 yards. So she had this unique combination of syndromes. So Washington State University asked her to be, come to one of their conferences. And it was the Japanese that said, oh, this is from radiation. Lo and behold, through the Freedom of Information Act, Greenpeace exposed that there was a large radiological event that they did not tell, that the government had not told anybody about. Pathogens get out. Oh, accidentally, they escaped, So it's been going on for some time, and it will increase.
Yeah, and I can't imagine that they're going to be any more forthcoming with the grand solar minimum and the reset of society anyway, because, just going it without all the radiological effects, and even if 5G was not being unfurled, and just say we were living literally back in the 1970s, this grand solar minimum would be enough to reset society. And when I say a reset, I am talking a full and total reset of everything. Population decline, economy, population migration, lack of food availability. It would happen anyway, but now we have all these other things on top of it. So I can't see anybody being any more forthcoming than they would be with any of these other events that have happened over the last 20 years. It's just sickening that the information that's hidden, or since you're talking in the 70s, I mean, that's how many decades now? It's sickening how they just try to hide, to try to, I don't know, cover for private companies so there won't be any litigation against them, or to try to protect the full industry here, there, and everywhere, because you don't want it to be deemed as unsafe because people might not accept it in their backyards. And I mean, we look at this time and time and time and time again, and yeah, I don't know where it will ever end. Maybe the evolution of our spiritual beings will, and I'm really hoping that at this time there'll be some vibrational frequency uplift where we kind of leave this darker plane that we have existed in. And that's just the cosmic cycle here with the Kali Yuga. And if you talk about the Indian Vedic traditions, where the low energy vibration comes, and then we get into these higher vibration realms, and it's just a cycle from low to high to low to high. Well, luckily, we're coming out of the low and into the higher, into the Dwapara Yuga at the moment. So each day, vibrationally higher energetically. And I hope we keep heading that direction, because where we were is not a place that we should return to. My personal opinion on that.
Yeah, once again, I think that comes to us as individuals, and we can't rely on society or government, but on a personal level, we can embrace those a higher spiritual level. We can rise above this whole muck that's happening. We can rise above what is being assaulted upon us with 5G and cosmic radiation and all of that, humans have survived through these extinction level events. And they thrived. Look at the beautiful cave dwellings and the artwork in them. And I just was looking at one this morning. I think it was on Diamond's channel, where it had these beautiful buffalo in the ancient cave in France. And it was during a similar time. And so here they were holed up in this cave, but they made these exquisite, I don't know if they were buffalo or it kind of looked like buffalo. Of course, it was pre-coffee, so it was some type of a creature, but it was extremely detailed. And this is like 14,000 years ago. And so we can rise above it. And that's really encouraging, that we don't have to get bogged down, even if our neighbor is crabby. I mean, I would not even be here, but I didn't have to ruin my whole day. I just looked up at the beautiful mountains and the trees and could enjoy what the scene before me and the season that it was. And so each of us can do that. And our mindset is going to be pivotal, going into this event, that we don't let it bog us down. Yes, we're going to have our bad days, but then, whatever you turn to on a spiritual level, you can rise above it. And that's just really exciting news, I think. And you can be that light in the world.
Yeah, that's so true, because the way I look at it is the greatest opportunity in human history at the moment, where other people are looking at the same exact thing, only seeing doom and gloom and cannibalism. And I'm like, whoa, 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 hold on a second here. We got a lot of different ways to look at this thing. I'm perceiving greatest opportunity to be able to help the most amount of people that we can to transition together, moving through this. And then other people are looking at it, like hiding in their basement for 30 years, eating canned food. Like, whoa, that's a huge disconnect between perceiving the same exact circumstance. So your mind is everything in the way you're going to process this information as we march through these years.
I do have an interesting story. So when David and I moved to the off-grid on top of a mountain at 6,000 feet, there was a valley, and then there were some more rocky mountains on the other side that actually was the Continental Divide. And a couple from Oklahoma moved there. And you would think a couple from Oklahoma would be fairly self-sufficient, but they moved up a draw, which is like a little ravine type thing in the Rocky Mountains, but on the Continental Divide side. So the Rocky Mountains are pretty high. And I don't know, maybe their elevation was 6,000 feet or so. So it was the husband and the wife and the dog. And this is like the fall before David and I moved into our place in the fall. And so this was the previous fall with their dog. They had one cord of wood. This is the Rocky Mountains, one cord of wood. And I'm not sure exactly what they had for food, but it wasn't much. And of course, they didn't grow their own food. And so I can't remember if it was the husband or wife, but one of them, because they had no food, they were snowed in, which is going to be a very real scenario for many of us if we don't prepare and we're not growing our food and the weather turns cold. So this same scenario could happen anywhere, even New Mexico or South America, or even where you're at. And that our real estate agent was terrified that was going to happen to David and I. Of course, we were prepared. We were born for such a time as this. So, I was entertaining at Thanksgiving all the hunters on the top of a mountain. So it wasn't a concern. But that just gives you an example of how quickly, if you don't have food and you're exposed to cold weather, you could breach that barrier of. It happened for the Donner Party. It's happened to those soccer players down in South America. So we need to understand that we if we're desperate and we don't have food and we're cold, we will almost do anything to get that food. So it's a lessons to think about.
Well, it's lessons to think about preparation. It does, even taking a couple steps back from that, still, how prepared are people these days? I look over, I got, how many 60, 70 pounds of just sprouting seeds sitting here in one room. I would be ready to, grow my own food through the entire winter. But what happens when it comes to the next spring? And what if we have a bad planting season where then there's no availability for the next batch of seeds for me to go out to buy more seed from somewhere else? How prepared am I really for that? I have the skill to bring that to the next season's, seed that I can harvest myself, but then I need to save away so much that I can't eat because you got to save it for the seed. So then you start to get into all these, really how prepared is everybody? And I consider myself pretty prepared because I'm in the middle of what's going on with these changes and trying to report on it. But the average people just across the planet, and I'm not going to say in any one country, I'm just going to say the average people across any country across this planet are not prepared at all for these changes. Like how much money do people have in the bank in the United States? I mean, in India for sure, or go to Africa, or go to some places, across this planet and look how much savings people have. If something were to go awry, how much could they really run out and buy in a store? But then that presents a whole gamut of problems where everybody else would be running out to the store at the same time. You see what happens with hurricane. They run, everything's empty on the shelves. Now, what if it's this type of scenario where you go, uh-oh, this is going to be a 15-year event, not a 2-week event, such as a hurricane? Then what? Things are going to change so fast in the way the psyche and humans operate for survival, to protect their kids, their families. I think it's just going to be an interesting time. And that's why I try to do my channel too, to try to get the word out that we need to get more prepared. Because if you're more prepared, we're all more prepared. That's the whole thing. Is if there's a million prepared people out there, life is going to be quite a bit easier than if there's 2 prepared people out there.
Absolutely. And that's part of what I do is I have begun uploading my tutorials, like all my gardening experiences, different things like how to ferment things, which that could be wine, could be kefir, kombucha, whatever fermented vegetables I've got going right now. I've got some raspberry champagne fermenting like crazy right now. So how to make bread, how to make butter. I have a thing called austere cooking, but it's not, I guess I was trying to think of I'm terrible at titles. I can do a article, I can knock it out of the park, but titles I'm terrible at. But it's basically what the bleep is that? And it goes into things like baking soda. What is baking soda? What is baking powder? What's the difference? How do you substitute this and that? Like they did during the Depression. Let's say you don't have eggs and you want to make a cake. How do you substitute? Or, without running to the store. So that is over at climatesun.com. And it's really inexpensive. It's under $10, and you can get all the tips that I've learned. It gives you, how to make simple things. Like I love popovers. It's an old-fashioned recipe, and all you need is flour and water and an oven, and you can make popovers, and you can fill the popovers. You can do it with cream meat. You can do it with honey. You can do it with whatever your favorite filling is. But what it is it's kind of like a muffin, but it's all hollow inside. So it makes a nice little bed for whatever filling you want to put in there. It could be veggies, it could be sprouts, whatever you love. And they're not very high in calories. It only takes 20 minutes to make that tutorial. So I just uploaded one this morning called Strategic Garden Planning. That's more for outdoors. And then for my patrons, I just did a 2-hour special on indoor growing, and where I walked through, I did a show and tell with my grow boxes and my lighting system and this and that. and then also talked about radiation and how that affects the plants. So there's resources out there, and while we have internet and these platforms, we can educate people to get them prepared and inspired. Like I said, I look at this as very exciting times, and I'm thankful to be here and be able to give solutions and help people on that journey. It's exciting, and I know you're doing the same thing. You've been a great inspiration to me.
Oh, thanks for that. Now, also, I wanted to bring you over to, excuse me, Shepherd's Heart here on the Patreon platform, so people can still reach out and be able to support your great work as well, bringing us this information on how to protect our bodies in this most unusual time, I think, in human history, at least at this point, that we've experienced in written record. But as I look here on Patreon, I see all these different PDFs that you have with all the different skills, and I'm most particularly interested in the canning because I think that is going to be a factor for us to be able to store this food. And you have a huge range of different documents here that you put together on the Patreon platform here. What's that? Shepherd's Heart, Health and Beauty. And what's the URL that people can go? So what's the Patreon handle that I can, or others can go and take a look at what you have put up there?
So at Patreon, it's shepherdsheartfarm.com. And I'm one of these people that loves to give empowerment and education. So even if it's a little small amount, then you have access to everything. I do weekly briefings. I put up documents of interest for my patrons. I do behind the scenes. So I'm pretty active. It's a pretty lively bunch, and I really enjoy doing it. Matter of fact, I did a couple posts before we did this interview. So, and then I'm always doing articles. I do about 5 articles a week that I post at the news at shepherdsheart.life. That's my blog site and news site. And then, of course, I'm on Facebook. If you like images and little anecdotes and stuff, I have Montana Secret Garden on Facebook, and I would friend you, and you can see all the how the farm rolls. And I'm very brutally honest. If I'm having a good success, I will tell you about it. If I am having a terrible disaster, I will tell you about it. Like, I don't know, 10 days ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, you know how time is these days, I go out and there's like this creepy orange tentacle thing strangulating my plants. And I dig down and I look for roots, and there were no roots. And I'm going, what the heck is this? And it was fluorescent orange. And it had these tentacles, and they were everywhere. And I pulled them off, and my plants, and I put them on the ground, and they moved like snakes. And it was like, this is the creepiest thing I have ever seen. And so I did an article on it, and I kid you not, one of my patrons contacted me and said, that's Dodder, and Dodder. And starting in 2012, it started to invade the whole United States, and it's taking out vast swaths of our crops. It loves tomatoes, and it loved my lavender. And the only way, you have to destroy it. So basically I had to uproot healthy, productive plants and burn it, because otherwise I would create a monster. So there's these things that we have to think outside of the box, at new things, and we have to have our eyes wide open to see not only the things that we're comfortable seeing, but maybe things that we're not comfortable seeing, such as this Dodder. I could have easily missed it, but I thought, oh, this is too strange. And I thought, oh, is this like a fungus? It looked like mycelium, but it acted like a snake. What is it? Did it come from geoengineering? I wasn't sure. So anyway, I never did find out where Dodder actually originates from, but it's not native to America. So I think we're going to see more of these. It's a parasite. What it does is it sucks out the lifeblood of the plant. And I think we're going to see more of that, whether that's in the plant realm or the human realm. We are going to see things, people that want to suck out our lifeblood. And I think we have to, that's another thing that we have to protect against in our lives.
Yeah, that's real interesting. The invasive plants, at least the kudzu down in the southeast U.S., you can eat that. You can use it for plant food, or sorry, for animal fodder. You can mix it in. It's not tasty. Goats eat it, but other cows and milk producing animals, you have to mix it with other things at about 10% in there. But still, it's usable in some fashion. You can plant, you can eat the leaves yourself. But this daughter sounds like incredibly scary and terrifying. It sounds like you'll wipe out everything that you've grown for the entire year, and I'm sure you cannot put that in your body afterward. I mean, would you consider eating plants that have been infested with that? I think not.
Yeah, I think that we need to avoid anything that is a parasite, that draws its life force from another life force, because then, if we consume it, what is it doing it to our life force? So I think we have to be careful about that type of thing.